Hello everyone and welcome to the Collegiate Athletics Advocate. My name is Will and today we're going to continue our discussion on conference realignment. In this episode, we'll finish up our overview of Pac-12 expansion in my third and final video in the series on expansion candidates. The last two candidates left to examine from my original Pac-12 expansion video are Texas State and Creighton. These two candidates are very different from each other. One is a full sports school and probably the most likely to be joining the conference, and the other is a non-football member who's probably the least likely to be joining the conference. However, I still thought they'd make for a good video together. Let's get into it. Texas State is a school in San Marcos, Texas, which is right on the I-35 corridor between Austin and San Antonio. They're considered to fall officially inside the Austin DMA, number 34 in the U.S., since San Marcos is closer to Austin than it is San Antonio. But it touches both, as a large portion of their alumni tend to be fairly evenly dispersed between the two cities, as well as other metros in Texas. Formerly known as Southwest Texas until 2003, Texas State has steadily grown to be the 7th largest university in Texas, and one of the 75 largest in the country. Along with their institutional growth, Texas State has steadily grown their athletic programs over the years. Most importantly, their football transitioned to FBS in 2011, and they joined the Sun Belt Conference in 2013. They were a fairly average team until G.J. Kinney took over as head coach in 2023. Since then, they made their first bowl game in 2023, the First Responder Bowl against Rice, and secured their first ever bowl win. They followed this up this past season with a repeat appearance and win in the First Responder Bowl, this time against North Texas. This year, they are slated to see more success and growth, looking to secure their first Sun Belt Conference title. In other revenue-generating sports, they've had varying levels of success. They're not known for their men's basketball, and that program has not experienced much recent success, with the highlights being a few solid seasons, landing them 2 CIT appearances in 2017 and 2019, and a 2022 NIT appearance. Their women's basketball has had a similar track record, but they were able to capture their first regular season conference championship in 2023. All that being said, neither program has reached the NCAA tournament in over 20 years, and have never made it past the first round. Unlike their basketball, Texas State's baseball program has experienced far more success. They've had multiple conference championships and NCAA tournament appearances, the most recent of each occurring in 2022. Aside from their actual athletic success, they have great facilities, a good little level of administrative and donor investment, and a really cool college town/campus environment. If you want to see more on that, JY from the Big Mountain just did a trip down to San Marcos to check out Texas State for himself and has some great content on it. I'd highly encourage you to go check that out if you haven't. I think their greatest plus, though, is that they have a great rivalry with UTSA, along with the proximity for a fantastic travel partnership. Coming back to reality, I'm not going to pretend like any of this makes them anything truly special for a potential ad. However, they look like they won't detract from the level of the conference and have a lot of growth potential to become a truly additive member of the PAC. Not to mention, the PAC really needs at least one full sports member. Texas State looks motivated enough to move, and a move to the PAC makes geographic sense since they're on a bit of an island as the westernmost team in the Sun Belt. Most importantly, the financials look to make sense as the exit fees from the Sun Belt are not very high, and they could probably get them at a discount while still being able to help Texas State turn a profit since the media distribution from the Sun Belt is also not very high. Let's break that down. The Sun Belt has a media distribution of around $1 to $2 million. Their exit fees seem to be somewhere in the realm of $5 million. Even if they stayed as a 50% share member, they'd still turn a profit, potentially quintupling their revenue. I believe they'd likely start as a partial share member and build up to full share membership over time. Overall, I think Texas State would be a solid addition as a conference builder, even if they are just an investment hope right now. I'd personally be very happy to see them in the new Pac-12. Now on to the second school we're going to talk about today, Creighton. Creighton University is a school in Omaha, Nebraska. That DMA is number 73 in the United States, which isn't that impressive, but I believe that their brand has national recognition. They're currently members of the Big East Conference and do not have football. As I touched on before, they're probably the least likely school to be going to the PAC, but they're the best non-football member that I can actually think of as a candidate for the PAC. To recap, the main criterion for PAC membership, specifically non-sports members, is having a strong men's basketball program. Other bonuses are being on or west of the Mississippi in the Central Time Zone, strong baseball and women's basketball programs, good facilities, and location in a large DMA or having strong national brand name. Creighton's men's basketball has had a great amount of success over the years and is one of the best basketball programs in the Big East. Their last Big East championship was in 2020, right before COVID canceled the tournament that year. However, I'm going to give everyone a chance to look at their postseason results over the last 5 seasons. They would be, without a doubt, one of the strongest brands in the PAC, so that criterion is definitely satisfied. As for women's basketball, they too have had a great deal of success. Once again, this would be one of the best programs in the PAC. In baseball, Creighton is another success story. Looking at their results, there's a lot to see. The most recent highlight would be that they're the outright champions of the Big East this year and only just got eliminated in their regional final of the College Baseball World Series. Overall, their athletics completely overachieve the standards expected of a non-football member entering the Pac-12. Of course, the question has to be asked, why would they come to the PAC? Well, I think there are some great reasons why they might consider it. The money would likely be very similar to the Big East, so that's not a Pac-12 advantage. However, Creighton is on a bit of a geographical island with the rest of their conference. As far as competitiveness goes, the Big East looks to be about level with the new PAC, with an argument to be made for either superiority in men's basketball. However, that competitiveness is really driven by UConn. If they leave, which I think they will as one of the top backfill candidates for the ACC if their best teams leave, then I think there is a serious argument to be made about Creighton wanting to jump ship as well. At that point, the Big East would drop below the level of the Pac-12 in basketball. As far as that is concerned, I think that the soonest an ACC team would leave would be 2028. I believe that's most likely to be Florida State, as they have the biggest budget and the most donors for that kind of move. Though I'm not going to get too much into that, as I'll have another video coming out on that later. I'd say that if the move and corresponding UConn backfill doesn't get announced as happening by 2028, then the Creighton move to the PAC will never happen. Essentially, it's 2028 or bust. After that, the move is just really not worth it. As far as other non-football options besides Creighton go, I think the only other two are Wichita State and St. Mary's. I don't think that either are truly competitive enough to be in the Pac-12. However, if I had to choose, it'd be Wichita State over St. Mary's, in my opinion. Opinion being the key word. St. Mary's may have the edge in men's basketball performance, but they've only had superficial success in the tournament, as they've never made it past the Sweet 16 and only made it there twice. Additionally, they fall behind Wichita State in all other categories: women's basketball, baseball, and athletic facilities. St. Mary's really lacks the level of facilities of the rest of the PAC, other Olympic sports successes, and undergrad population compared to Wichita State. That all being said, I don't know that it's worth dwelling on this too much, as there's so much we don't know at this point. That concludes my series on potential PAC additions. Before we wrap, though, let's recap everything we've discussed in the last few episodes. Again, this is my opinion and interpretation of how this will play out. First, media rights. The PAC should be receiving between $8 and $12 million per school per year from their media rights deal. I believe it will be at or above $10 million. This will come from a multi-partner deal revolving around Warner Brothers, as they are trying to fill their athletic inventory on their linear TV networks, specifically TNT, and have a strong streaming component in Max. Within this deal, they will likely acquire the rights to and house the Pac-12 network. Pac-12 Enterprises will become the dedicated in-house production studio for the Pac-12 network underneath Warner Brothers. The CW, who will already have been a 2-year partner of the PAC, will be involved as the secondary linear TV partner. Prime Video will be involved as the secondary streaming partner. Second, expansion. The PAC needs to add at least one full member to be considered a conference in the eyes of the NCAA. The PAC should add another one on top of that so that they can play an 8-game conference football schedule. If they add a 10th member, they'll be able to hold an official football conference championship game and have the option to play a 9-game conference schedule. They'll also be able to have a basketball schedule where everyone plays everyone twice, because Gonzaga makes 11 total teams, so a 20-game conference schedule where everyone has a home and home. Any members after that are just bonus. That's also why they can't be just any school, because they must be additive. A school that's not additive at that point is only diluting the pot. When it comes to the Pac-12, there are 2 schools of thought on realignment/expansion. Best of the West or best of the rest. John Canzano talked about this on Jason Puckett's Puck Sports podcast show today. If you'd like to hear any more on that, then go check that out. If the Pac-12 wants to be the best of the West, they'd simply add UNLV and maybe St. Mary's and be done, as they'd be firmly the best conference in the Mountain and Pacific time zones, i.e. the Western United States. If they want to be the best of the rest, which I personally hope they do, they would still start with UNLV, but they'd keep going after that, gathering the best remaining teams on or west of the Mississippi in the Central Time Zone to become a G5 superconference closer to the Big 12 and the ACC than the rest of the G5, with the goal of elevating back up to their level by 2031 and being able to decently compete with those conferences until then. With all of that in mind, let's go over a best of the rest expansion and how I personally hope and believe it will play out. I know the news came out already that the Mountain West 5 gave their official exit notices to the Mountain West on time, but I think that's more a formality than something to look too far into. I still think the PAC and the Mountain West are discussing UNLV in mediation. We will likely know about that very soon. If they don't come, that would certainly be a bummer, but that actually doesn't alter the progression of the list at all, so let's continue. The next school would be Texas State. I believe Texas State will come into the PAC at a reduced distribution share of 50% in year 1, then 75% in year 2 before going to a full share by 2028. This would be to cover the costs of bringing in all the other schools and spread out the spending. Hopefully, the PAC is able to help them grow into a strong, stable program. Not to say that they're not a good program, and absolutely no disrespect to the Bobcats, because I'd be thrilled to see them in the conference. But they have some growing to do if they're going to become a consistent competitor in this newly imagined conference. However, if nothing else, they'd have an important role as a travel partner and rival for the next school on our list, UTSA. UTSA would be the last school capable of joining the PAC in 2026, in my mind, given the media distribution reasons. They would likely need to receive a subsidy from the PAC of $3 million or more. In 2027, the PAC would be able to add Memphis and Tulane. If they came in as full members, they'd need to receive a subsidy of $6 million or more per school. There's been talk of them coming as football-only members, which I could get on board with, but that would require them to find new homes for their Olympic sports if the American doesn't let them stay, and Memphis likely doesn't want to stay. For Memphis, the Big East is supposedly not an option, but they could fit well within the A-10, who have a healthy $5 million per school payout. This, on top of a $6 million 60% revenue distribution, would do well. However, Tulane wouldn't likely be able to go to the A-10 as they're fairly far outside of their geographic footprint. I could maybe see it if Memphis agreed to become a package deal only with them, and Tulane would likely need to provide a travel subsidy to the conference. Otherwise, Tulane is likely looking at the Sun Belt, which isn't bad for baseball, but is only a money-positive move if they let them come as a full distribution member. Regardless, there isn't really a world where that isn't messy and difficult, so I hope they just go to the PAC as full members. Lastly, we have Creighton in 2028 as a full member. The more I've thought about it, there isn't really a world where Creighton needs to be in the Pac-12. However, it would be really cool if they were. If all of the members I mentioned before came in as full members, specifically Memphis, the PAC then turns into a full-on basketball power conference. The money they dilute from the conference in media distribution would come back in the form of NCAA tournament units from their performance, as well as them at elevating the conference, not just in basketball, but in baseball and other sports as well. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't wish-casting that the Pac-12 would get Creighton eventually, but it's too fun of an idea and too good a geographic fit that they join the PAC to not think about it. With all of that taken into account, here is my prediction for the new Pac-12. This officially concludes my series on the Pac-12. I'm as eager as the rest of you to see how this all plays out and find out how right or wrong I am. I'll be posting a Mountain West expansion video here soon, so stay tuned for that. I do just want to say that I appreciate the support from all of you. The last video had over 3,000 views in 48 hours. I could have never imagined that my no-budget, spare-time amateur podcast would perform in this way in an algorithm. I don't monetize this, so the engagement from all of you is what makes this truly worth doing. I really enjoy discussing these topics with all of you in the comments and seeing you all discuss with each other. I'm looking forward to discussing more with you in the future. Have a great rest of your day or night, and be well.